welcome to another episode of L&D Unboxed, a space where we decode learning and leadership with today's inspiring voices. I'm your host, Ujjwal, a passionate HR strategist with over 25 years of experience in the Asia-Pacific region. I have worked at the intersection of leadership development, talent strategy, and organization effectiveness, and now also as a strategic advisor to Stratbeans. So, folks, our today's topic is the business of emotions, turning fans into superfans and learners into lifelong believers. And I'm really excited to have with me today Anurag Dahiya, the Chief Commercial Officer of the International Cricket Council, the ICC. Anurag has had a very stellar career, starting from his ESPN days. And, Anurag and I to those days where we were working together. So, with a track record across sports, entertainment, and broadcasting, he has led growth, innovation, and commercial transformation across multiple markets and is known for unlocking value through strategic partnerships, customer-centric innovation, and building high-performance teams. Anurag, welcome to the show.
Thank you. It was really pleased to be here. Thank you for having me.
Awesome. So, your career has been about turning audiences into lifelong communities and loyal ones too, right? Whether it was, in your earlier stint in the sports business or now at ICC, I think that what you bring with your experience, Anurag, just fits very beautifully into the conversation that we are going to have today. So let's just dive straight into it. Yeah. So we all know that, in sports and media, fan loyalty is very important and it's almost everything. So from your experience, what role do you think emotions play in creating not just audiences, but passionate superfans? And also what can, the other businesses borrow from it?
Absolutely. Emotions are the real fuel of loyalty. And in sports, it's not just about watching a match. It's about feeling. It's pride when your team wins. It's heartbreak when they lose. A feeling of nostalgia when you hear the anthem. These are emotions that create lifelong bonds. Now, that's for me, the fascinating thing is that fans actually want to engage. They're not passive. As a sport, our role is not to drag them into engagement, but to create environments where they can dive in. Because true engagement is rewarding, it's fulfilling, it's exciting. And fans are actively looking for these opportunities, whether it's discussing tactics with friends or debating an umpiring decision online or traveling miles or sometimes countries across borders to see their team. They really want to be a part of it. And the other aspect is that, it's not just the highs that create this bond. In fact, sometimes it's the lows that matter the most. When a team suffers a crushing defeat, fans don't scatter. They lean on each other. They share the heartbreak, the frustration. There's a lot of the what ifs. If only that catch had been taken. And often these shared losses create deeper loyalty than even the victories, as far as I can see. The key is really being together in that moment of defeat. So, if fans feel abandoned, the loyalty cracks. But if they feel united, it forges steel. So it's about creating that environment where the game carries on even after the match is over, right? The other critical bit from our sports perspective, and I think it applies to other businesses and to life in general, is context is really critical, right? So fans don't equally invest in every match. If it is a meaningless bilateral friendly, let's say, with no stakes attached, they will probably ignore it. But if it's the same match, the same two teams playing, and say it's part of a World Cup group stage and can determine who's reaching the final, the engagement surges. And then every ball matters because that's connected to an outcome. And that I think applies really beautifully to learning, because all too often I've experienced at various stages a course being given without context. Go and complete this training because it's required,
Yeah.
uh, and that's like asking fans to watch a random warm up game. You if however if learners could see the course connecting to their future career or to organizational priorities or to to the bigger tournament that they're part of, that's when I feel engagement can surge. So it's not just, I guess, the lessons for learning and development would be that don't just provide content, maybe just focus on providing context even more than on the content. And it's not just about delivering information; it's delivering meaning. Because I think everyone, all of us, want to engage. Just like fans with cricket, but only if we know what is at stake and why it matters.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And I was reading somewhere, Anurag, that, if you create some peak moments, whether it is for learners or for fans, right? Because emotion, like you rightly said, binds people a lot, right? So if you create those peak emotional moments for, fans and learners, that goes a long way in building loyalty. So
100%.
yeah. Is there anything that ICC does in specific, anything you can share as as a best practice, which you think businesses can borrow from?
It's like I said, we just tap into a frenzy which is already there. So in a way, it's about spotting what your audience is looking for and
Mhm.
then highlighting that, right? So there are moments, like you said, there are peaks. The clues are being given by your audience constantly. And that's what we do, when we look at our social media strategy, for example, we're constantly looking at what sort of content is it that the fans are watching. They're telling us something. And it's about feeding that. Now, you know, it's easier in our environment because it's not like I have to necessarily mold people into a certain way of thinking or move them in a certain direction, which is often what in a corporate setting a learning challenge would be to actually deliver certain meaning. But in terms of engagement, certainly, what you say absolutely is correct. It's about creating those peaks. And how you create the peaks, the clues are being constantly delivered by your audience. So it's as much about learning, listening learning from them, listening to them, and then delivering whatever it is that we want to deliver. I mean, it's while I say that we don't necessarily have a direction in which we want to mold our fans, but on the other hand, we actually do. Sometimes there is an ulterior motive. For example, if I can call it that, ulterior motive is getting people to watch more women's cricket.
Yeah.
Um, and we've looked at how people engage with men's cricket, what are the highs they get there, and learning from that, we've tried to incorporate that into how we present women's cricket, how we promote it. And so yeah, I mean that's it. It goes back to really, uh, I think, listening to them, learning from them, and then delivering our message.
So, the other day I was talking to a few ex-colleagues and friends, and we were talking about, how does emotion help build loyalty, right? And one of the things which came up, and, we all were just kind of looking at our own past experiences in saying that whether you are looking at fans, in a stadium, or whether you're looking at learners in a workplace, the one common thing, Anurag, I feel is that they like rituals, or they like to, build something which is like a tradition so that they become part of a bigger thing, right? And that's where I think you were also talking about the fact that, even when there is a loss, people want to come together and people want to analyze that. And it's I don't know if you'd like to call it like a ritual, because every time India loses a cricket match, I mean, the emotion is as high as when India wins a cricket match, right? Or I mean, you can say as low or as high, but you know, the
Just as
sadness,
intense.
yeah, the sadness is that high, right? So I just feel that to get them to be a part of a bigger thing, right, always probably helps people connect more. I mean, I don't know if you experience that, but I picked that up from a little bit of what you were saying.
No, 100%. All sport is about that. It's about feeling part of a movement, and each moment that you are there is ultimately part of a movement, and it's being part of a larger entity almost. By the way, it transcends team loyalties.
Mm.
We had the good luck of finding ourselves in Paris for the Olympics, and there's regardless of which country you're from, in the moment, you're
Yeah,
part of that whole Olympic movement. It's the emotion of seeing someone strive really hard, and it underlined something for me, which is that people want to see others succeed,
yeah,
especially when work has gone in. It's amazing. And when you can, if you can harness that emotion, that involvement, and that applies for in corporate settings as well. You're talking about rituals. It's sport is all about rituals. It's the whole thing of few people run 100 meters, they win, and that's that, right? But then
yeah,
there's the whole ritual of an anthem being played, a flag going up, a gold medal going around their neck. That's all rituals.
yeah,
And that's what makes it meaningful, right? It,
yeah.
it just resonates with people, and that's the meaning that activity then acquires. And that's true of corporate settings as well. We design, and we probably, it is to something to be encouraged to have those rituals which engage people in learning, of course, but even beyond. It's such a powerful way of connecting with fans, with learners. Absolutely.
Yeah, and I think, like you mentioned, celebration is such a big part of it. Whether it is your team, another team, your country, when people celebrate, and we talk about goosebumps, right? When the national anthem is being played, every Indian gets a goosebump, or every French would get goosebumps, right? So I just think that whether it's a small thing you celebrate in your corporate life, right, or a big milestone that you celebrate in the learning space, or it's a sporting event, celebrating it together also makes it so much bigger that everybody who's not even on the field feels a part of it, right?
Yep. Yep. And if you go back about 20 years, even with the ICC, our events were played very much like most bilaterals are still played today, which is, somebody goes two captains walk to the middle, there's a toss, who's batting first, they go back, and then two
Yeah.
people pad up and walk in, and then, the rest of the other team walks in, and they just warm up a little bit, and off you go. Uh, and about 20 years back, almost to the day, or about 18 years back, when you mentioned ESPN, and I used to work there, and we had acquired those rights, and uh, connecting, when you talked about rituals, that's what I was reminded of. Rituals have a great role in also creating a sense of occasion, right?
Right.
So when if you create the sense of occasion, the seriousness with which people engage goes up, right? So very simple things like teams walking in got synchronized, and we as rights holders worked with ICC back then and say, hey, these are the things that you should be doing. Actually, rather than them just kind of wandering in, we're going to have them line up and then walk in.
Mm.
Maybe accompanied by kids, because here's an opportunity also to transform those kids. Maybe you'll find your next Tendulkar or Virat Kohli from there. But more importantly, it becomes a ritual where, it's the start of something big. Have flags come up, have the anthems play, because that's what underlines the fact that it is country v country. It's at the highest level. It was the same game. It had the same importance. Still, just as engaging sport-wise or in cricketing terms as it used to be, but just the engagement went up drastically since then, because that it marks the moment. It's that elevate that moment into an occasion and say, okay,
Yeah.
this is big, right?
Yeah.
So having the right rituals can elevate the sense of importance you attach to an activity, and you get far better engagement, I feel, if you did that. It's whether it's sometimes these can feel very trite, getting a senior person to come and talk at the beginning of a course, for example,
Yeah.
versus just starting in the morning with a coffee and let's go. There's a difference, right?
Yeah.
So simple things like that can, I think, make a difference to how people look at their participation.
Yeah. So true. So, Anurag, you've led teams through large scale innovation, right? I mean, what shifts have you seen when organizations move from, very transactional relationships with customers or employees to more emotional and transformational ones?
Yeah, so um, if you look at a transactional relationship, I talked about those one-off games. It's like that. It serves a purpose, might even be entertaining, but once it's over, it's over, and people move on. There's no
Yeah.
lasting connection. But transformational relationships are different, because you force them in an atmosphere of shared purpose, identity, and meaning. You know, you and I both worked together in an organization which was pretty much writing the rules of a new industry. That was transformational, and certainly I can say that the bonds we formed working in that team, where it was the start of the pay television industry, and pretty much people are all writing their own rules, finding ways of doing things, which were never done before. And the relationships that were formed in that kind of furnace,
Yeah.
those are lifelong. Those are some of the strongest, most long-lasting relationships at workplace that I have. So certainly that transformational phase in a business is amazing for. And by the way, it's not all wins, as we said earlier. Some of it is losses as well, but that high pressure, high stress environment, where you're forced to almost fuse with each other. Yeah, it's great in terms of forming those relationships. I think also, um, the other aspect of that phenomena is, unfortunately, or maybe fortunately, not every organization is going to go through that kind of transformation
Yeah.
every year.
Absolutely.
Uh, so so I think it's about creating micro transformations, right? It's creating uh, maybe a project that people can rally behind. You know,
Mhm.
so a very simple example is we pioneered vertical video coverage a couple of years back, and you know in a way it was just a technical experiment. Uh, you know, But if we just left it at that, I don't think it would have become quite as successful as it did. Because what we started by saying was not that let's produce one more format. The kind of micro transformational moment, if I can call it that, was realizing that fans live on mobile, fans consume and want vertical content. They want to experience cricket in ways that fit with their daily lives. And when the team then saw that, and they saw that they weren't just creating or editing videos, they were actually going to shape the way a whole new generation of fans experiences the game.
Mhm.
That's when the energy drove, that is the energy that drove the project, right? Because then they felt like innovators, like they were part of a movement. And ultimately, what we came out with, the fans also responded with passion, because we weren't just throwing out something we like. We were actually meeting them where they were,
Yeah.
and I think that's the real difference.
No, you touched upon a really important point of being of belongingness. right? And I mean, in our work experiences and, what research says and what we've heard is that if you make people, belong to a place, to a project, to a vision, to, anything bigger than themselves, right? The loyalty automatically comes, right? Then that willingness to go the extra mile, then that willingness to, take the initiative because it's your own, you belong there, right? And for organizations who create that belongingness, I see a lot of benefit coming to that organization, whether it is in terms of retention or whether in terms of increase in productivity. So that human connection and that belongingness, I think, is key when we are trying to get people to, give more than what they would generally do.
Yep,
So Anurag,
absolutely.
many CHROs and L&D leaders struggle with disengaged learners, right? And especially in an era of digital fatigue and Gen Z expectations and, AI, what can they learn from the way sports and entertainment brands keep their communities coming back for more? Because, I mean, ESPN had loyal viewers, and I'm sure, and, as just as a sport, cricket has so much loyalty. It's like a religion. So, is there anything that you can share which would, help our listeners?
Yeah, look, digital fatigue is a reality, and Gen Z absolutely demands more than just information. They're looking for experiences.
Yeah, yeah.
They're looking for, even in our coverage, it's about giving them micro stories, within a minute or so. So brevity is really important. In terms of the content that we deliver, very clearly for us, you either have them in the first 5 seconds or not at all, right?
Hmm.
So it's not like, you mentioned linear television, which we were part of once upon a time.
Yeah.
If there's a 30-minute show, it's a 30-minute show. And you might not like it. Chances are you will probably still sit through it and then say it was crap. It wasn't great. We don't have that luxury anymore. The first 5 seconds, if they like it, they're gonna continue or not at all. So I think that's really one key aspect of all content we deliver. You have to hit hard early on, and then you can develop your story. You can go more into the into whatever you're about to say. But those first 4 5 seconds, I think, are just so important. Um, Visual storytelling is super important. We have our coverage on text, and we actually do a lot of fair bit of audio as well. But guess what? I mean, no surprises. What really performs is video. So again, that visual storytelling's become so much more important than ever before. It's always been very important, obviously, in sport, but it's probably more important than ever. The other bit is that, you know, from our perspective at the ICC, and I don't know how much this is translatable to other environments, but when we talk, we have been very conscious that we do not sit ourselves at a level above our fans, right? So,
Wow.
which is very easy for us to do because, it's a federation, so, you're at top of the sport. But our conscious effort has been that when we talk to our fans, they should perceive us as another fan, right? So we are possibly super fans, but that's it. We're not at a level above them
Hmm.
or, somehow more important than them or whatever. So, we once you have that tone of voice, that engages, especially the younger fan base really engages with that because then they can relate to you on a one-on-one basis, almost as if you are on the same pedestal. And that's it's reflected in a lot of ways in, for example, advertising. If you went back 20 years, the way endorsements worked were, here's somebody important, and they are talking as themselves, this really important person, and they like this product, and so maybe you should give it a shot. Whereas if you look at most advertising today, they will take an iconic person, but they will not know. In a lot of cases, they're not playing themselves, right? They're
Yeah.
an average everyday person,
Yeah.
right? Or they are behaving like an average everyday person. You know, why is that? Because absolutely the younger audience absolutely will relate to someone who is like themselves. Because it's also about what's achievable and what's not. A generation before, my generation perhaps, and before that, you had icons, you had heroes. You could aspire to be them, but you somehow went in thinking you'll never be them,
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah,
I
actually.
want to be like them, but come on,
Can
let's
never
get
be
real. I'm
them.
not.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
let's be real. I'm never gonna be them. Whereas today, most of the youngsters will actually not have that distinction in their heads.
Hmm.
They, when they aspire to something, they want to be that,
Yeah.
not like that. They want to be that, right? And that's where I think there's the moment you start behaving like that icon or hero from the past, who should be emulated, or you should aspire to be like that, then you've lost them. But if you are someone that is on the same plane as them, talks like them, you know, makes mistakes often like them, and which we do, by the way, on our social every now and then we'll make a mistake,
Mm-hmm.
but we'll laugh it off, right? Just like they would.
Yeah.
So that's, I think that's really one, I would say, a linchpin in our strategy, in engaging with our fans. That you if you are going to be if you're going to engage with them, you have to be relatable. You have to be like them. You have to behave like them, talk like them.
Yeah.
Content has to be like what they're producing. So we use
Yeah.
a lot of, for example, influencers who have
Mm.
nothing to do with cricket. We just because the other bit, I think, and I could go hours talking about it, is that the realization that what you're trying to do is influence culture, right? So
Yeah.
whatever you're doing is ultimately going to influence culture. It's probably more true of something like cricket and some of the other sports and entertainment. Perhaps not as true of a regular business. If you're I don't know, selling insurance or something, and you're probably not influencing culture. But at least if you approach it with that mindset that whatever, if you want to make it last and have impact, then you have to approach it with the view that you're influencing culture. And to influence culture, it cannot be storytelling, cannot be sermonizing, which is disconnected with the person you're trying to influence. It has to be embedded in their culture, has to
Yeah.
use the
Yeah.
vocabulary they use, has to use examples and stories that they relate to or know. And that's really it. That's what we're trying to adopt in our communication with the fan.
And you've said, some things which are so meaningful because, that's the audience. It's the younger generation, right? I mean, that's the future. So to be at their level, to meet them where they are, to speak their language, not to be seen above them. And most of all, I think to keep it real, because this generation feels that it's absolutely okay to make mistakes, right? And they like to just keep it real.
Yeah.
So engagement with them comes with that emotion that, everything is real and, we are partners rather than, us telling you irrespective of the age gap, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's fantastic. So, in one of my earlier podcasts, Anurag, the guest said that curiosity, trust, and empathy are the real catalysts of transformation, right? And we spoke a little bit about that. So, from your lens, how can leaders embed these values in a way when they are designing the journeys for both their customers and their employees? And is there anything that you guys do differently which all of us can learn from?
But that's very powerful. Curiosity, trust, and empathy. Because curiosity, I think, is the starting point. It's especially in our environment in sport. If you think about it, curiosity is what pushes anyone to experiment with a new shot or a new strategy or a new way of training, because you're always trying to find an edge. And
Yeah.
that's true of organizations. It's curiosity that drives innovation. And I think, at least in the behind the scenes, the business of cricket, the way we run it, for example, here at ICC, but also a lot of our members, um, some of that ethos from the coaching, from team training, etc., probably just seeps through,
Mhm.
and so there's a lot of asking of questions, right? And not so much of directives. So, yes, um, that comes out of, I think, comes from a place of curiosity, 100%. But I think the it's meaningless if you can have that environment of people being able to ask questions, to push boundaries, etc., if there isn't enough trust. So I think that trust is the enabler. Uh, it's in ours in the sport. You will have the coach, right? And if the coach says that, I trust you, go out
Mhm.
and do your thing, express yourself, you'll see that, teams do wonders. And
Yeah.
we've seen some of the teams that are actually, I mean, if you look at any of our events, and especially the lower ranked teams, in terms of their talent, they are not that different.
Hmm.
And very often it's the coaching that makes a difference, and that coaching is great because they've been able to build that environment of trust where people are no longer scared of failure. They're psychologically safe. You
Yeah.
can try. Even if you fail, you still belong here. And that's so important. That's when the curiosity leads to bold steps, because
Yeah.
otherwise it's just curiosity and doesn't go beyond it. And the third aspect that you mentioned, empathy, uh, I think that's where uh, you said keeping it real, and I think that comes from empathy. When
Yeah.
you have that empathy, where you're able to relate with your team, um, you know, that's where authenticity in your transactions comes through, and that's the glue that pulls the team together. We talked about how fans stick with their teams even in defeat. you
Yeah.
know and that's again empathy. It's empathy because they know that these guys tried their best and they were just not good enough today, right?
Yeah.
And so I think these are really powerful sentiments. And we're lucky as it is because we're in an environment where a lot of people have actively played sport. We used to joke, I've always found myself surrounded by failed sports people. There were a lot of people who couldn't, well, not all of them were failed, to be fair to them, but a lot of them were. But they've been grounded in that environment of pushing boundaries, of not being necessarily capped by rules. So being curious about, what else could I do? Could I play it differently? Can I, what happens if I lift my bat a little bit more? If I play with a heavier bat, how does that work? All of that. But then with a fair dose of trust and empathy, which in their team environments and in this work environment, like I said, we're blessed that a lot of people don't have to be coached that way. They're already kind of, that's ingrained.
Yeah.
But I absolutely couldn't agree more. those are aspects which are critical. And we talked about transformation earlier.
Yeah.
You know, if you're looking for transformation, these are the values you want to embed in your systems, in your journeys and interactions. Uh, you know, uh, the thing is that, and as I said earlier, it's not about just highlighting these values as something that drives success, but these are values that matter even when even more when you fail. So bonding over a failure even
Yeah.
more strongly than we keep saying this. Let's celebrate failures, but what does that actually mean? You know,
Mm,
do you actually go out for a drink when you lose a contract, right?
mm,
Uh, and that's the key thing to do. It's about these creating some ritual, as you said earlier, around that, which we do have our own little things, successes and failures. We tend to mark each of them,
mhm.
and that's the sport, I guess, which we just take through to our business as well.
Yeah, yeah. And some of the best examples of inspiration, courage, determination all come from the sporting world, right, Anurag? So because there's so much emotion there, right? And that's what we're talking about today, the business of emotions. And that emotion just binds people no matter what that, who that is from or for. It just reminds me of a little story that I'd read about Apple. Actually, we're talking about how people can become super fans in sporting, but also people become super fans of brands, right? And I remember when we walk into an Apple store, right? It's like not walking into a shop, it's like walking into a temple. The design, the sleekness of the store, the straight white lines, the salespeople dressed up in similar clothing, right? So I just sometimes feel that, people don't just go into an Apple store to buy a phone or a laptop, right? It is, I think what Apple has really cracked, and, we all know that, is that they're selling an emotion. And that's what has gotten them so much loyalty. It's that emotion, irrespective of what Apple product you buy, right? You exhibit the same loyalty because of the emotional connect that they've been able to build with their customers. So
Yep.
I think this whole business of emotion transcends whether it is to a product or whether it is to a sport or whether it is for learners in a workplace. I mean,
Yep. Yep.
when I was looking at this topic, I was also thinking that, when we look at learning, right? And somehow thinking back on some of the teachers who were there with us in school, right? I mean, if I think about my favorite teacher, and I think that probably might be true with a lot of us, I can't really remember what that teacher taught or how I fared in that subject, right? But how she made me feel, he or she made me feel, how supported I felt, how inspired I felt, how they got the best out of me and made me believe that I could do more than, I believed in myself that I could. So, yeah, I mean, let's just move a little bit towards our AI and, the whole world being disrupted by that. So, learning now risks becoming mechanical, Anurag, right? Because there's all data, no emotion, which is what we've been talking about, right? How do you see technology and human connection now coexisting to create scale without losing soul? Because all that we've spoken about so far, examples are where, we feel that connection, that belongingness, that soul. So how can we do that in, learning?
Yeah. Look, I think we are in times where this is it's the biggest topic. We're no different in our sport as well, by the way. I mean, on a weekly basis, we are trying to figure out how we want to use AI, how we want to use emerging technology, but also trying to identify where the risks lie in doing that. So we're no different from any other business in that respect. Totally agree with you. If somehow learning became all data and no emotion, That's soulless. And going back to what you were just saying, some of your best teachers and mine as well. Absolutely, I hardly remember what hard stuff they taught, but I remember the feeling. I remember how I felt in those classes or with those teachers. Um, and that's the key thing, in learning, in development. Um, because our sport is a good example. Cricket is one of those sports where statistics mean a lot. It's a very, very statistics heavy sport. But fans don't tune in to just see the statistics, right?
Yeah.
So that would be a very poor substitute for watching a cricket game. They tune in because they want to see the roar of the crowd, the tension, the emotion. Uh, Analytics are valuable, but they don't replace the human drama. And I think that's really the same with I think learning as well. AI can tell me what to learn when, but it's only a good mentor or a coach or a community that can tell me why it matters, or it can inspire me to push further. I think that's the other bit. How do you push further? There was a very interesting take somebody had recently, which was that, if you look at AI and, ultimately AI is it really thinking? Probably not. It's very good at, I mean, LLMs are literally good at putting a word after the next after the previous one. Literally, that's what they're doing. What's the most logical word to follow the previous one, right? So, and all of that is based on whatever they've been trained on. So if you trained AI around the time when Galileo was observing, the heavenly bodies,
Yeah.
and then you use that AI to say, I don't know, is quantum computing possible? They're not, they're gonna, that AI is never going to give you that answer, right? Um, Quantum computing happened because somebody thought through everything that exists, but then went on to think beyond that,
Yeah.
right? So it's always great to have everything you can accumulate by way of information. But then, true development, true learning happens when you take that and move it forward
Yeah.
beyond what you just learned, right? And I think that's really the critical thing. In your learning and development strategy, are you going to just deliver the what and when, or are you also delivering your why? And which is how people are able to then push the boundaries, go beyond what has been taught, right? So because that's what you want ultimately. If your training was all that was required, and from your teammates all you need is whatever you trained them on,
Yeah.
that's quite meaningless. But if that training is going to make them push forward beyond what you trained them on, that's when you're going to get real results. And I don't think any AI is going to do that. So I think that's an important distinction to keep in mind. These are great tools to lean on for leveraging all the knowledge that already exists. But if you're going to push beyond that, then you need humans, and you need, as I said earlier, perhaps that context, that sense of why, that's really important.
Yeah. That's why the human in the loop concept, right? I mean, you cannot do without a human in the loop. And like you said, if you have to push forward, you need that emotion, you need that curiosity to kind of build and move forward. So, Anurag,
Yeah,
you
I mean, by the way, sorry to interrupt you. I mean, because we've been talking about cricket a lot. If you look at the sport
Mhm.
through the ages, the greatest sports persons to have been in our sport of cricket are people who did something different,
Yeah.
right? So they came out and actually did something others had never done. They've been good players who've done whatever has been done to a high level and continued to do that really well. But the great players are the ones who innovated and went beyond, right? So certainly they weren't as good as their coach. They were better than their coach.
Correct. They were better than their coaches.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you've done, some awesome work in ESPN now, I'm sure at ICC as well. But if you have to look ahead, let's say the next 3 to 5 years, Anurag, what excites you most about building emotional loyalty communities, especially because we know that trust is fragile, right? I mean, it can get broken pretty quickly, and, fans can move away, and people can move away from brands as well. So, any advice you'd like to give to our listeners or our leaders who are trying to future proof their organization?
Yeah. Well, I don't know if I can give advice or qualified to give advice, but to me, as a relative outsider to the field of learning and development, um, I think the potential to make learning more like fandom is really exciting. Because fans don't just consume the sport; they live it, they identify with it. Like I said, they bond not only in victory but sometimes even more powerfully in defeat. You're right. I mean, trust is fragile. Uh, and people, especially the younger people, are skeptical of institutions.
Mm-hmm.
They are skeptical of motives. And that's why I think leaders should invest not only in digital tools, but in emotional design, really. Building spaces where people can feel that they belong, where what they do and their outcomes matter, and where challenges are faced together with a sense that, yes, you are inevitably going to fail every now and then, but that's okay. That's part of dealing with the world. And I think that's to me that's what builds emotional loyalty. That lasts through change, through disruptions, through uncertainty, you know, and needless to say, all of that is reality that every business faces, every
Yeah.
business I've been in has always faced on a very pretty regular basis.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I think ultimately it's using technology to scale processes and to do things better and all that, but ultimately building that trust which scales people and their
Yeah.
output. I think that's really I don't know. As I said, I don't know whether I'm qualified to advise, but certainly that's something I like to bring or try to bring to my work. Having that sense of trust and ultimately, my effort always has been to make it feel like a college or a university situation.
Yeah. No, I mean, you brought it out beautifully. Leaders should invest in emotional design. I mean, I love that, right? I mean, I think that's a leader's prime responsibility. Processes and everything keep happening. And even though the workplace is shifting now, with remote teams, Gen Z, AI changing the way we work, I think one thing which you also brought about so beautifully is that one thing which won't change is the human need to feel connected, right? So it's I think it's about empowering people, not just to learn, but to belong, like we spoke about. Yeah. So, Anurag, this has been a fascinating conversation. Thank you so much, because your insights make us believe that whether it is fans in a stadium or whether it is learners in a workplace, right? The emotional, I think the game is won on emotional grounds.
Thank you. It was fantastic talking to you. We don't always think of what we do in terms of organizational dynamics, but this was a fascinating conversation.
Thank you so much, Anurag. And to my listeners, I'd love to hear from you. What's a moment that has turned you into a super fan of a brand or a lifelong achiever of an idea? Please share your stories in the comments here. And thank you so much for tuning into L&D Unboxed. Please stay tuned for more episodes where we continue to explore the shifts in technology, leadership, and human values, and how do they intersect to shape the future of work. Until the next episode, This is Ujjwal signing off.